The Syndicate's executive lounge smelled of ozone and regret, which seemed appropriate given what they were about to discuss. Vexthara adjusted her crystalline neural interface and regarded the human sitting across from her with the kind of expression typically reserved for defective machinery. "Let me understand this correctly," the Korthani crime boss said, her voice carrying the subtle harmonics that indicated barely controlled irritation. "You want to fight Omega-7 in the Crucible, broadcast live across 17 sectors. The human nodded once. She was unremarkable by galactic standards. Average height for her species, brown hair pulled back with mechanical precision, clothes that suggested military background without announcing it. What made her remarkable was that she was volunteering for televised value and correct. Grixnol, the hegemony's official representative, made a sound like grinding metal. "Impossible! Omega-7 has eliminated 43 challengers without sustaining damage. It was designed specifically to—" "I know what it was designed for." The human's interruption was polite but absolute. "I've reviewed the combat footage. All of it." Vexthara leaned forward, her interest piqued despite herself. The Crucible had been her most profitable venture in 3 centuries of organized violence. Species from across the galaxy paid astronomical sums to watch their champions face engineered death, and the few who survived became legends worth their weight in quantum crystals. But volunteers, that was new. When does win-win ship? Simply personal reasons? Grixnol's primary arms gestured dismissively. "We cannot authorize a spectacle based on personal reasons. The hegemony has standards." "Since when?" The human's smile was razor-thin. "Your last champion was a convicted war criminal from the Nexus conflicts. The one before that murdered his entire Clutch family. I'm offering you something unprecedented. A human who walked in here willingly." That was the crux of it, wasn't it? Humans had been making noise about joining the galactic community for decades, but they were considered a backwater species. Aggressive, certainly, but lacking the technological sophistication or cultural refinement of established civilizations. They had nothing to offer except curiosity value. "The insurance costs alone," Grixnol began. "Are waived," the human interrupted again. "I've signed all necessary documentation. No legal complications, no diplomatic incidents, no insurance claims. Your only risk is disappointing viewers who expect a longer show." Vexthara's business instincts were humming. Controversy meant viewership, and viewership meant profit. But there was something about this human's calm certainty that felt wrong. Prey animals didn't behave this way. "What's your background?" she asked. "Former military. Strategic planning primarily. Combat experience? Sufficient? Against engineered organisms?" The human paused, and for the first time, something resembling emotion flickered across her features. "You could say that." Ketmore, who had been silent until now, spoke in the clicking language of his species before switching to standard. "This violates protocol. The Crucible exists to demonstrate species superiority through combat excellence. Allowing a suicide mission diminishes the spectacle." "Does it?" The human tilted her head. "Or does it create the most compelling narrative you've ever broadcast? The first human to enter the Crucible, facing your undefeated champion? Either I die horribly and confirm your assumptions about my species, or," she shrugged, "something unprecedented happens." The room fell silent except for the ambient hum of life support systems. Vexthara ran probability calculations through her neural interface, but the variables didn't make sense. No species had ever volunteered for the Crucible without believing they could win. The human's confidence felt genuine, but her chances were mathematically zero. "There's something you're not telling us," Vexthara said finally. Many things. I'm not telling you. But the relevant fact is this. I want to face Omega-7, you want viewership records, and everyone wins. Except whoever dies in the arena. And you're certain that will be you. The human smile returned, sharper than before. I'm certain someone will die. Whether that constitutes losing depends entirely on perspective. Rixonal's exoskeleton clicked nervously. We need guarantees. Assurances that this isn't some elaborate terrorist plot, assassination attempt, cultural statement. The human shook her head. This is simpler than you think and more complicated than you'll ever understand. Do we have an agreement or not? Vexthara looked at her associates, then back at the human. In 3 centuries of orchestrating violence for profit, she had learnt to recognize dangerous certainty. This human possessed it in abundance. We have an agreement, she said. Omega-7 versus... She paused, realizing she didn't know the human's designation. Commander, the human said. That's sufficient. As the meeting concluded and contracts were verified, Vexthara couldn't shake the feeling that she had just agreed to something far more significant than a simple execution. The human's calm confidence suggested knowledge that the Syndicate lacked, and in her experience, asymmetric information was the most dangerous weapon of all. The Crucible would broadcast in 72 hours. For the first time in decades, Vexthara wasn't certain what the outcome would be. 17 billion beings across the galaxy had tuned in to watch a human die, which struck the broadcast director as oddly appropriate given the species' documented fascination with their own mortality. What nobody expected was for the dying to take quite so long. Commander, her only designation, stood in the center of the obsidian arena, bleeding from 3 separate wounds, while Omega-7 circled her like a mechanical predator. The bio-engineered killing machine was a masterpiece of hegemony science, 12 feet of weaponized muscle and synthetic bone, programmed with the combat techniques of 47 warrior species. It should have ended this farce in under 30 seconds. Instead, the human had been talking for 7 minutes straight. The fascinating thing about pain tolerance, she said, dodging another swipe from Omega-7's primary talons, is how it varies across species. Kalthani neural systems, for instance, interpret physical damage as existential terror. She gestured toward the VIP box where Vexthara sat, her crystalline interface flickering with agitation. Whereas humans categorize pain as merely inconvenient information, Omega-7's response was to launch itself 15 feet into the air, aiming to crush the human beneath its armored bulk. Commander rolled aside with practiced efficiency, her movement economical rather than desperate. Your champion here represents peak physical evolution, she continued, addressing the cameras directly now. Optimized reflexes, redundant organ systems, cognitive processors designed for tactical analysis. Absolutely flawless. She paused to duck under a horizontal sweep that would have decapitated most beings. Unfortunately, flawless also means predictable. In the commentary booth, Jektal tried to maintain professional enthusiasm despite growing confusion. Ladies, gentlemen, and various reproductive configurations, this is unprecedented. The human appears to be lecturing while fighting for her life. His co-commentator, a former gladiator named Quintar, chittered nervously. This isn't combat. This is something else entirely. Commander caught Omega-7's next strike on her forearm, the impact audible throughout the arena. Bone cracked. Human bones were notoriously fragile. But instead of screaming, she smiled. The problem with engineering perfect killers, she said, her voice carrying clearly through the arena's acoustic systems, is that perfection eliminates adaptability. Watch. He stepped into Omega-7's guard instead of away from it, accepting a devastating blow to her ribcage in exchange for access to the creature's neural interface port. Her fingers found the hidden access panel that only someone with detailed technical schematics could locate. "Combat Protocol Alpha 77, she said clearly. Omega-7 froze. The arena fell silent, except for the hum of recording equipment and 17 billion beings holding their breath. Commander stepped back, blood running freely from multiple wounds, and looked directly into the primary broadcast camera. "My name is Elena Vasquez," she said, using her real designation for the first time. "Former Strategic Intelligence Corps, Terran Colonial Defense Force. 3 months ago I was diagnosed with Kepler's syndrome, an incurable neural degenerative condition unique to humans who've been exposed to certain quantum frequencies during deep space operations." Omega-7 remained motionless, trapped in a feedback loop created by its own programming. "I volunteered for this spectacle not to prove human superiority, but to demonstrate something far more important. Your entertainment industry is built on corruption, your champion is controllable through basic technical exploitation, and your entire power structure depends on maintaining the illusion of hegemony invincibility." She pressed something into her palm, a small device that hadn't been detected during security screening because it was biological, grown from her own modified tissue. "This broadcast is reaching every inhabited system simultaneously. By the time I finish speaking, your stock markets will have collapsed, your military contracts will be under investigation, and your client species will understand exactly how thoroughly they've been manipulated." Vexthara was screaming orders through her neural interface, but the broadcast continued uninterrupted. Human technology, it seemed, had been underestimated in more ways than one. The Syndicate's financial records, combat recordings, and political correspondence are being released across all networks as we speak. Consider it my final gift to galactic civilization. Elena's legs gave out then, her body finally acknowledging the damage it had sustained. She remained kneeling in the center of the arena, still speaking directly to the cameras. "Humans don't seek death. We simply refuse to let it be meaningless." She activated the device in her palm. Her neural pattern spiked once, briefly, then went flat. 17 billion beings watched a human die exactly as she had planned, and for the first time in galactic history, victory belonged entirely to the corpse. The Nexari approached grief through mathematical precision, calculating loss in algorithmic sequences that generated haunting melodies. The Vorthak processed trauma by secreting specialized enzymes that literally rewrote their memory engrams. The Kethmori dealt with shocking events by entering hibernation cycles lasting several standard months, none of which explained why Elena Vasquez's death had caused a galactic economic collapse. Ambassador Turian of the Diplomatic Corps stared at the casualty reports streaming across his holographic displays, each number representing another institution crumbling under the weight of revealed corruption. The Crucible Syndicate had been the obvious first domino, but the humans' data dump had contained financial connections spanning half the galaxy's major entertainment, military, and political organizations. "How extensive is the damage?" asked Director Kexel, her usual composure cracking like overstressed ceramic. "Complete." Turian's response was flat, professional, and utterly without hope. "The hegemony defense contractors have lost 60% of their value. Entertainment conglomerates are facing criminal investigations in 43 systems. 3 colonial governments have already collapsed." What made it worse was the human's surgical precision. She hadn't simply stolen information, she had curated it, organized it, presented it in formats optimized for each species' psychological triggers. The Valdrani received detailed financial analyses that appealed to their mercantile instincts. The warrior caste Thecamar got evidence of honor violations that demanded immediate retribution. The bureaucratic Ornelli found regulatory violations so extensive they required complete governmental restructuring. 17 billion viewers, Kexel muttered. She spoke directly to 17 billion beings. She spoke to each species in their own conceptual language, Turian corrected. Every word was calculated to resonate with specific cultural values. This wasn't a death speech. It was the most sophisticated psychological warfare operation in recorded galactic history. The aftermath had been swift and merciless. The crucible itself had been shut down within hours, its assets frozen pending investigation. Vexthara was facing prosecution in 17 different judicial systems. Omega-7 had been dissected by military analysts trying to understand how a dying human had compromised its systems using nothing but verbal commands. That particular mystery had yielded the most disturbing revelations. The technical analysis came back, Turian said, gesturing to a secured datapad. Vasquez didn't hack Omega-7 during the fight. She had already compromised it weeks before entering the arena. Kexhal's thermal regulation failed briefly, her skin shifting through several color spectrums that indicated severe distress. Impossible. Security protocols were designed by the same hegemony contractors whose files she released. Apparently, humans had been studying our security systems for considerably longer than anyone realized. The implications were staggering. If humans could penetrate hegemony military technology, if they could orchestrate galaxy-wide information warfare while maintaining the appearance of primitive isolationists, then every assumption about Terran capabilities required immediate revision. There's more, Turian continued, accessing another secured file. Linguistic analysis of her arena speech reveals embedded information that wasn't apparent during the initial broadcast. Hidden meanings that only became clear when cross-referenced with the document releases. What kind of hidden meanings? Coordinates, financial routing numbers, authentication codes. She embedded operational intelligence within her dying words, using linguistic structures that wouldn't trigger our translation algorithms, but would be perfectly clear to anyone with the proper decryption keys. Kexal made a sound like escaping atmosphere. She turned her own death into a data transmission. More than that, she turned her death into a recruitment tool. Every species is now asking the same question. If one dying human could cause this much damage, what could healthy humans accomplish with proper resources and cooperation? The political ramifications were already manifesting. 3 major systems had sent diplomatic inquiries to Earth within days of the broadcast. The hegemony's client states were reassessing their loyalty calculations. Even the traditionally isolationist core worlds were requesting intelligence assessments on human capabilities. The most damaging aspect, Turian said, reviewing his final report, isn't the financial losses or political upheaval, it's the psychological impact. She proved that our entire power structure was vulnerable to someone we considered insignificant. Kexel activated her personal communication array, requesting priority contact with the hegemony high command. Draft an immediate analysis, military implications, economic projections, diplomatic recommendations. What's our primary concern? If this was what one human could accomplish while dying, what are the living ones planning next? The question hung in the recycled atmosphere like an undetonated weapon. Across the galaxy, similar conversations were taking place in boardrooms, military installations, and government chambers. Elena Vasquez had died as planned, but her death had accomplished something unprecedented in galactic politics. It had made humanity impossible to ignore. And somewhere in the far spiral arm, on a small blue planet that most civilizations still considered primitive, other humans were undoubtedly watching the chaos unfold with quiet satisfaction. 6 months after Elena Vasquez turned her own death into the galaxy's most expensive lesson in underestimation, humanity's first official ambassador to the hegemony arrived, carrying nothing but a briefcase and an expression of polite interest. Dr. Michael Chen stepped off the transport shuttle with the unhurried confidence of someone who had never doubted this moment would come. The hegemony's welcoming committee, hastily assembled from whoever could be spared from damage control duties, regarded him with the kind of nervous energy typically reserved for unexploded ordnance. "Welcome to Nexus Prime," said Chancellor Vekthul, his diplomatic smile slightly too wide to be genuine. "We trust your journey was comfortable?" "Adequate," Chen replied, adjusting his simple grey suit, "though I noticed increased security protocols throughout hegemony space. Recent developments must have everyone on edge." The understatement of the millennium, delivered with such casual precision that half the welcoming committee flinched visibly. Vekthul gestured toward the gleaming diplomatic complex that housed the galaxy's most powerful political institutions. "Perhaps we should proceed directly to chambers. The Council is eager to begin formal relations." "I'm sure they are," Chen's tone suggested mild amusement at a private joke. "Tell me, how is the reconstruction going? I heard the entertainment sector took quite a beating." "Regrettable circumstances," Vekthul said carefully. "The actions of certain criminal organizations have required extensive reforms." "Criminal organizations?" Chen nodded thoughtfully. "Is that what we're calling them?" The silence that followed was pregnant with unspoken tensions. Everyone present knew exactly what Elena Vasquez had exposed, but diplomatic protocol demanded elaborate verbal dancing around uncomfortable truths. "Your predecessor left quite an impression," Vekthul finally ventured. "Elena wasn't my predecessor, she was a volunteer." Chen's correction was gentle but absolute, though I understand the confusion. Most species struggle to distinguish between individual initiative and governmental conspiracy. They reached the council chambers, where representatives from 47 systems waited with expressions ranging from curiosity to barely concealed hostility. Chen took his assigned seat, notably positioned where everyone could watch him, and opened his briefcase with theatrical precision. "Before we begin formal proceedings," he said, withdrawing a single data tablet, "I should clarify something about human diplomatic philosophy." The chamber fell silent. Elena Vasquez acted independently. Her mission wasn't authorized, funded, or even known by any governmental authority. She was a dying soldier who chose to spend her final weeks studying your weaknesses, for purely personal reasons. Chancellor Cretin of the Outer Territories leaned forward. "You expect us to believe this was coincidence?" "I expect you to believe what the evidence supports." Chen activated his tablet, projecting a holographic timeline. Elena's medical records, personal correspondence, travel documentation, all available for verification. A brilliant individual making an independent choice to expose corruption she found personally offensive. "Then why are you here?" demanded Admiral Grickstall. Chen's smile was sharp enough to cut atmosphere. "Because Elena's little demonstration created opportunities that would be foolish to waste." He gestured to the hologram, which now displayed economic projections and political analyses. "The power vacuum she created requires filling. The financial systems she destabilized need reconstruction. The military technologies she compromised demand replacement." The implications crystallized with horrible clarity. "Humanity is prepared to offer assistance," Chen continued smoothly. "Advanced defensive systems, immune to the vulnerabilities Elena exposed. Economic partnerships to replace the revenue streams her revelations eliminated. cultural exchange programs to prevent future misunderstandings. At what cost? Vekthul asked, though his tone suggested he already knew. Full diplomatic recognition, trade agreements, mutual defense treaties. The standard package for civilized species. The chamber erupted in multilingual arguments, but Chen waited patiently, occasionally consulting his tablet as if checking stock prices. When the noise subsided, he spoke again. The beautiful irony is that Elena never intended to help humanity gain galactic standing. She just wanted to make corrupt bastards pay for their crimes. The fact that her revenge accidentally positioned us as your new best friends is simply fortuitous timing. And there it was, the cosmic punchline that would be told in diplomatic circles for centuries. One dying human had accidentally engineered her species' rise to galactic prominence by refusing to let her death be meaningless. The galaxy had learned a valuable lesson about underestimating humanity. Unfortunately for everyone involved, it was the wrong lesson entirely.